Are you looking for a quick method for making these long skinny triangles? Or maybe you'd like some tricks for improving your piecing. In this video, you'll learn fast rotary cutting and sewing techniques for these scalene and isosceles triangles. You'll also find out about paper piecing and how it can be used in place of quick cutting techniques. Are you ready to get started? You'll find a copy of this supply list below. Make sure to press all your fabric before cutting. Cut 3 red and 3 white strips, 2 inches wide by 44-45 inches long. Put one of the white strips aside. Using 1/4 inch seams, sew 3 of the red to 2 of the white. Press your seams to the red. Line up your strip set with the line on the mat and trim to get a nice clean edge. Measure over 15.5 inches and cut. Take the extra white strip, put right sides together, and I'll bring this up a little extra, and sew. Press to the red, and you can put both of these strip sets aside for now. And now on to the star. You can choose between the 2 different methods featured in this video. There are quick cutting and sewing formulas, along with this paper piecing method. I suggest you try both of these, maybe make 2 of each, and then compare your results. To make the 9-inch star, you'll need to cut 4 blue squares 3.5 inches and 1 3.5 inch white square. To get that measurement, I divided my 9-inch block into 3 equal sections of 3 inches. I added a 1/2 inch for the seams, and I came up with 3.5 inches. The blue background between these star points are triangles. This side and this side are equal, so this is referred to as an isosceles triangle. It's important to note this because quick cutting methods differ between different types of triangles. For example, this isosceles triangle often gets confused with this equilateral triangle. If you use quick methods for cutting this triangle for this spot, it won't work because the bottom of this triangle is longer than 3 inches. Now you could make a template for these pieces, but I like using this quick cutting formula. You measure the finished size of the square, which is 3 inches, and then you add 7/8 to that measurement. So you'll cut a square that's 3 7/8 inches. Fold your squares in half and then press at the midpoint. Cut from the midpoint to the bottom corners. We'll have some waste with this method. I usually toss these extra pieces. You'll need to cut 4 of these. The white star points are made up of right angle scalene triangles. None of the sides are equal on these triangles, but there are right angles in the corner. So you can use a rectangle to cut these out. To determine the cutting size of this rectangle, you need to add 3/4 of an inch to this measurement and 1 1/4 inches to this measurement. So let's look at this top one. From here to here is 1.5 inches. So I take 1.5 inches and I add 3/4 of an inch and I come up with 2.25 inches. This measurement is 3 inches, so I add 1.25 inches to that and I come up with 4.25 inches. My rectangle that I cut will be 2.25 by 4.25 inches, and I need to cut 4 of these. Now you notice, if I were to cut this one and this one at the same time, it wouldn't come out to look like a rectangle. As a matter of fact, these are reverse pieces, and so when you cut these, you have to remember a little trick. Let's try 2 different rectangles so you can see what I'm talking about. So if you put right sides together, cut on the diagonal, and you'll end up with 2 sets of star points. You'll need a total of 4 sets. When you lay out your square, make sure this isosceles triangle is in the correct position. The shorter side is down on the bottom. This side is longer and this side is longer, but sometimes it's confusing. It looks like they're all the same size. Shorter side on the bottom. Put right sides together. You'll want to line up those tips. I usually don't pin. This is all bias, and so it's easy to stretch. Just sort of lay it there gently. You'll notice that up here it matches, but down here there's a little extra. So I start sewing with what I call a leader, a little piece of fabric that's been folded, and gently put that piece right up there. Make sure that it stays nice and even. Don't pull it because, as I said, this is bias. And just gently sew through. I'll take this over to the ironing board. I'm going to press to the dark because I get a shadow back here on this white, but many people think it's much easier if you press to the white. You're going to put right sides together, but instead of matching here, you fold this back and you see that that's about where that would match up. I end up with something that looks like this. There's sort of two ears sticking up here. I'll take this over to the sewing machine and sew 1/4 inch. Once again, I've got something extra down here, and I've got these two little ears up at the top. And I start with the leader. Very gently guide that through. Let your sewing machine do the work for you. I'll press to the inside. After pressing, you want to trim to a 3.5 inch square. Unlike these common half square triangles where the slanted line must intersect this corner, this slanted line does not intersect the corner. Also note that this point won't be at the top here. You'll need a 1/4 inch for your seam allowance. If you find that you're having trouble with this, you might want to press to the outside like I've done on this block, and as I said, you do get a slight shadow, but pressing out makes construction easier. Let's see if that makes a difference. Or you might want to try another method that involves paper piecing. You can draw your own pattern, or you can purchase sheets of these patterns. The nice thing about paper piecing is you don't have to be perfect when you cut your material. You'll just need a square that covers this pattern. Fold on the sew lines. I just use an old card for this. Place your fabric on the back of the pattern and pin. On this pattern, it doesn't make a difference if you go here or here. So I'll fold this back, and I'll take my scissors and I'll eyeball about 1/4 inch away from that fold. Turn this over. It looks like this. I'll take one of the white pieces. Now I've cut rectangles about 3 inches by 5 inches. And this is where this is going to go. So I put right sides together, line up along the edges, and I take this over to my sewing machine and I'll sew on this line. Here's where I sewed, and then I press my piece back. Now I'm going to go to this side, so I'll fold this back. I'll rip that over a little so I can get that folded like that. I'll take my scissors and I'll eyeball that 1/4 inch seam. I'll take another rectangle. Doesn't have to be perfect, but it should be about 3 by 5 inches. Put right sides together. Bring it over to my sewing machine. Stitch down that line. I end up with something that looks like this. After everything's been pressed, line up my ruler on that dotted line and trim away the excess. There's my completed square. To remove the paper, turn this over and gently tear that away. Lay out your block. Sew in rows using 1/4 inch seams. Be careful not to cut off triangle tips. Make sure that you have these two pieces lined up. If you'll notice down here, this piece is maybe a 1/16 of an inch higher than down here, and that actually will throw that tip off. This seam can be taken out and the pieces repositioned. In the middle, this tip can be rectified by taking out this seam and sewing a scant 1/4 inch. Press towards the solid squares. Put right sides together and match these intersections. I press my block and now I'm ready to add the stripes. Trim the edges. Lay out your quilt. Put right sides together and sew a 1/4 inch seam. Press your seam and then put right sides together, pin, and stitch. Trim the excess off the bottom. You won't be using binding on these quiltinis, so you'll first quilt the top and batting. You'll add the back later. So layer the flag over the batting. Sometimes I use a lightweight interfacing or pattern tracing material behind the batting to help keep lint out of my machine, but it's not necessary. Start in the center and work your way out when safety pinning the sections together. Since I'll be stitching in the ditch, I kept the pins away from the seams. I like a longer stitch length along with this walking foot for quilting, but for something this size you can probably get by with just using a regular foot and a regular stitch length. After quilting, stitch about 1/8 of an inch from the edge all the way around, and then trim off the excess batting. Cut the back the same size as the flag. Put right sides together and stitch a 1/4 inch around the edge, leaving about 3 to 4 inches open for turning. Turn inside out, press, and then hand stitch the opening closed. I hope you decide to make this flag and try out some of the methods used in this video. In the next video, you'll learn how to make this frame for your flag. Thanks for visiting LearnHowToQuilt.com. Please stay tuned and share this series with your friends.